Hi, good evening. Welcome to Community Homeworks class this evening. It's a roundtable discussion on how do I fix that? My name is Jean Walker, and I'm the Education and Volunteer Coordinator at Community Homeworks and your hostess for the evening. We will have three of our regular instructors joining us this evening. Each of them has chosen something that they hope will help you fix something at your house, but we certainly hope that you will ask questions also. You can type them in the chat area and we will be able to see them, and the guys will help you hopefully find an answer to your questions. We'd like to remind you that hopefully you're watching us live, but please tell your friends this show is recorded and you can watch it at any time. Tonight we're going to start with Gary, who's going to teach us a skill that everyone should know how to do. Welcome, Gary. How are you tonight?
I'm fine. I am fine. It's time to learn about these things.
Go ahead. What are you going to share with us this evening? I love your topic.
Okay. Well, I'm Gary Heckman, and I normally teach the water heater class, but I have been nominated tonight for the toilet plunger. And am ready, willing, and able. I'm going to pick you guys up and take you to the bathroom, which isn't that far from the kitchen. And, okay. Are you sure I haven't done this before? Okay.
No, last time we were in your bathroom, you had your shop vac.
That was it. Yes, this seems familiar. Okay.
So I have a question though for you that, when you're done showing us this, do you use a plunger differently at a sink than a toilet?
Somewhat differently. If you have good manners, you have a separate one for that job, often a smaller one. But I use the wet vac at the sink often enough that it's been quite a while since I have tried one on a sink. Well, so that's pretty successul.
I regularly plug my garbage disposal, so I can't shop vac it out. I have to plunge.
Okay.
And it is different than the toilet because you have to block both sides of the kitchen sink. So,
go ahead
and show us the bathroom, please.
That is entertaining. Well, I have to keep my eye a little bit, making sure we're watching the camera. So I would say my favorite tool is the real thing, the real plunger, not the little plastic bellows, but the serious real thing. Kind of old style, but still only 10 or 15 bucks. They're not expensive at all. And when they get old enough that they kind of collapse, they're no good. If you get over about 4 years old, the rubber gets old and it's just not going to do the real job. So do give up on them and keep one up to date and save yourselves a lot of trouble. So when we do have a clogged one, probably the best thing to start with is take the lid off. Take the lid off. Look down inside. Make sure that you know how to, should this toilet literally start to overflow on the floor, make sure you know how to get your hand in, close that flapper valve. Know how to close that flapper valve so that you don't have even a bigger disaster than you've got. And once you know how to do that, you get to go to work. Often it's good to flush and get the water level up a little higher. and then you go to work. And I kind of favor solid, hard, seriously solid, hard jabs. Let it refill. Get the water back up. Lift it. Repeat. It doesn't hurt to get a little angry at it and really give it a good thrashing and go to town. If you don't trust yourself hitting the handle and closing off the valve inside the tank, another option is a bucket of water, and dropping a bucket of water directly in, you can stop before you overflow the bowl onto the floor. So that is definitely a useful way to go at this. Sometimes even hot water is a good thing to help in the process of breaking it up. Plunge again, keep working it till it goes down, and then let it refill a number of times. A trick we would used to do at work, in the dorms. Of course, you never have big problems in a dorm, but when we got down, we would wad up like 20 sheets of toilet paper, drop those in, let them get wet, hit it again, make sure. If it'll take that, it'll probably take anything. Repeat. And that's generally what we need to know here.
Gary, I was always told that when you're plunging, part of what you're trying to do is bring the clog back up into the bowl as opposed to forcing it down in. That if you get some of it to come up, then you plunge again, and eventually it will go out of the bowl. But sometimes you need to break up the big clog first by pulling some of it back up into the bowl. That you plunge, and pull up so that it sucks it back up into the bowl.
You know, that may, your technique's probably going to follow with what the feel of the plunger itself is. If it'll let you do that, that sounds really good. If it will let you do that. If not, you're pushing. If you can get a good draw on it that'll come back, that sounds great. Go for it.
Great. Well, thank you, because it's just one of those things that you don't want to have to call a plumber because your toilet is plugged. It is something that probably 99.5% of the time you should be able to fix with a plunger. You just hope your child didn't put down a large toy or a rock or something that isn't going to go through.
A jar full of pickles, a jar of pickles, large pickles. College students, when they're moving out, don't put anything past them.
Old people too.
Okay.
Fish gravel, gravel from the fish tank, the flushable wipes that are not flushable. You guys don't flush those wipes, no matter what it says on the package.
Cat litter that says flushable, they only mean what you've picked out is flushable, not the entire kitty litter. Oh my goodness. We had to dig outside of that house. Yes.
Yes. There are times that plunging is not an option, but it's because of what you chose to put down as opposed to the plunger not working.
Yes. You're right. Yeah. Nearly 100% of the time, the plunger itself will do the job. But And you've probably seen them, the plungers that are so old that the handle has collapsed the rubber. Throw those out. Just
Yeah.
throw those out.
Or it's got a great big crack on one side, so there's no way it makes suction.
Right, right.
You go like this, and the water goes out the side.
Yeah, they're good for about 4 years, yeah, give or take. But past that, it doesn't owe you anything. You want this to work, get one.
And it's one of those things, if you've got kids going off to live in the dorm, it's a great gift. It's a great wedding present. It's, everyone should own one or two.
They make the one with the crystal clear handle. I even had one of those engraved. Yes. Oh.
And if you have bathrooms on 2 floors, buy 2 plungers, because nobody wants to carry it up and down the stairs dripping wet. They're not expensive. Get sufficient amount of them.
Yes. So thank you for the opportunity.
Can you tell us briefly, I know what I do when I have to plunge my kitchen sink, which has 2 drains into the central pipe. I have to plug the one and put some water in and then plunge with the other hand. Is there a better option?
Well, sometimes the spin and grin, you can spin it down and it will hold and seal and let you do that work. No, it's just awkward. It's just awkward to do everything that needs to happen there, and you go for it. Once you do get things going, run a lot of hot water. Just run a lot of hot water down.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, Gary, because I think that's just a skill that, once you're about 10 or 12, you should know how to do. It's something you're going to need to learn to do the rest of your life. It's not the same as some other things that we fix but it's a skill children should know, or at least teenagers. So.
Yes. And don't throw paper towel, we had a fellow that I think he was trying to be very environmental and flush his paper towels instead of the landfill, and caused a lot of difficulty.
So. There's only 3 things that should go in your toilet.
Okay.
That's what we used to tell my tenants. There's only 3 things that you put in there. Anything else? So, well, again, thank you, Gary. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge. Please hang on, and we're going to see what Harry has to show us this evening.
Well, I don't know if I can be as entertaining as going into the toilet and doing something, but we'll do the best we can. Well, I'm going to talk a little about repairing electric switches, or let's say replacing electric switches or outlets, and they're pretty much the same thing. And it's kind of strange because I'm not an electrician. I'm a builder, but somehow or another, I ended up being the electric guy at the classes at Community Homework. So here I am, and I'm going to give it to you, and just take it for what it's worth. Why do you want to change?
Because you always have an answer, even if it's made up. You always have an answer. So.
Well, yeah, I've always got an answer. Not always true, but that doesn't matter. If you ask me a question, if you don't know the answer, then I can tell you anything. Why do you want to change a switch or an outlet? They're perfect good. Well, because they're not always. They break down. Switches, how do you know if it's not working right? Well, if you flip it on and it doesn't go on, you check the breaker, you check the bulb. Maybe it's a switch. Usually, though, there's an indication that there'll be a little hissing sound, I guess you would say, of an arcing that it's just not working properly. Outlets, the same thing applies, but outlets, they tend, after a time, to not hold the plug on the wall. They get worn out, and they need to be changed. So, that's why you change it. Should you? Well, I'll show you some steps, but I got to say a couple things that are very important. First off, you make 100% sure you do not have power going to that switch. or to that outlet before you do any work. How do you do that with an outlet? One of these little critters here. It's a little neon tester. This is where it's going to be fun because I think I'm working on this camera from my and everything's backwards. These little neon testers, you stick them into the outlet, the ends right there. The light will light up. Where are we at here? There we are. You get a little neon light, lights up, it tells you there's power. If it doesn't light up, it's likely there's not power. Because that means maybe you didn't have the ends in there properly. My little favorite tool is something like this. Hold it back here. This is a non-contact or a contactless electric tester. Got a battery in it, a little button, and it can detect electricity even without touching it. You can see it's even picking up the electricity on the computer screen, not touching it. These are available at most big box stores, even some of the discount tool stores, maybe $5. They're well worth it. Okay, so you remove the plate off the wall. You take the screws away from the outlet or the switch, and you're going to see, if you have a newer home, wires that look something like this coming out of the box. There we go. There'll be a white colored wire, a black colored wire, and unless you have an older home, there'll also be a bare copper wire. That's the ground. Black is the hot, white is the neutral. And they'll usually be attached, of course, to the switch. How do you remove it from the switch? You can either just cut them right off with a pair of wire cutters, or if they're in the screw, you can actually take and remove the screw. And I'm going to show you now how to attach them to a switch. All right, the switch is here. You can see the switch has 2 brass screws on it and a green ground screw. Switches are easy because the black wire always goes on to either one of the posts of the screw. I use my wire strippers. Where are we at here? There we go. My wire strippers. I like ones that look like this because they can do several sizes of wires. They make a very clean cut. And I take about 3/8 to a 1/2 inch, twist it, and remove it. And now I've got bare end of the wire. Either with this type of wire stripper or a needle nose plier. And again, this is a lot of fun. I told you this was going to be fun trying to demonstrate on the screen. There we go. And I put a small hook on it. And that will go under the screw of the switch. Oh boy, this is fun. Everything's backwards here today, which is usually pretty good because I'm pretty backwards.
When we can come back in person, Harry will teach a whole class.
Harry would love to be back in person. I wish we could be allowed to do that because I would love to do it. When I put the hook on the screw, let me find that. There we are. When I put the hook over the screw, notice the way it's going. Because the screw is going to turn in a clockwise direction, and you want the open end facing that clockwise direction because when the screw is tightened, it actually pulls the wire right into the screw. It holds it tighter. Now, in most cases on a light switch, there'll be another black wire that's in the box. The box is the thing that's on the wall. It's either plastic, metal, or some sort of a thermal set plastic like Bakelite. And the white wires will be available to put a wire nut on. You'll see them all together like that. I did forget to bring those out, but you get the picture. If there is a ground wire, that goes around the green screw. Outlets are very similar, except on an outlet, you'll not only see the brass screws, we call them the gold, or silver screws, and of course the green ground. It's very important when hooking up an outlet that the black wire goes to the brass screws and the white wire goes to the silver screws, because that way the plug will stay polarized. And you'll probably notice most plugs have a large and a small slot in them. The large slot is the neutral side, and that keeps it polarized, because a lot of appliances now that you'll see when you look at the plug, like this one here, you can see that one is a little larger than the other, and that would be the neutral side of the plug.
Are you going to tell us your hint about the two colors of screws and the two colors of wires?
You want to get that old story?
Yes.
All right. Well, when I was teaching residential construction, I had an aide in my class, and he used to tell this story about the Lone Ranger. Now you got to understand, you're talking to high school kids, and they looking at you like deer in headlights because they don't remember that. But if you remember the Lone Ranger wore a white outfit, and he rode a white horse called Silver. White and silver. Where do we get those here? Well, he also went on with a story and said, if you remember the old A-Team, now the kids remember that one, and he talked about Mr. T. Mr. T was a black guy who had lots of gold. So black and gold, or brass for the gold. And that's what he would always say. And I said, I'd make it simple. If black touches brass, it will save your butt. Okay, the other thing about an outlet, and most switches too, is if you look at the back, you're going to see some small holes. That's for what's called back wiring. And it makes it a little more simple than attaching to the screw. And sometimes it's even better because it makes the wires easier to put back into the outlet. So in that case, I've quickly prepared this. You got to take the insulation off the wire at a specific length. And on the back of the outlet, there is a little indication. Where are we at? There we are, right there. That'll tell you just how much insulation to strip off. And then all you have to do is take the black wire on the black side, push it in, white wire on the silver side, and then you just have to screw onto the ground, and there you have back wired. And they stay there. And if you ever have to replace it, let me get up here. There's some small slots that you can put a small screwdriver in, and that will make a release for it.
So you don't have to wrap it around the screw and tighten it. You can just put it in that hole and it works.
Just goes right in the hole. It makes it fast, simple. And again, sometimes it's even easier to push the wires back into the box that way. And that's
because
called
they're not
back wiring.
sticking out of the sides and having to get mushed together.
Now, I'm going to go back to the switch situation. And they have what's called a three-way switch. And that's one of those cases where you've got a light switch that you can turn on at the top of a stairway and shut it off at the bottom of the stairway, or long hallways, etc. The switch looks very much like any other switch, except rather than having two brass screws, it has two brass screws and then one other colored screw. This one's black. I've seen them in copper. I've seen them painted red. Three-way wires look something look exactly like this. They've got a black, white, and a red. And because of the way the switch works, power comes into one side, but it can go out on either the other sides. I'd really love to go and do a whole talk about that, and even four-way switches, where you can have 3, 4, 5 switches operating one device. we don't have the time and the place for that. But I just want you to know that if you run into this situation, or if you have a three-way switch that you can turn on at one side and can't turn it off at the bottom, and then you go back up to the other side, turn it on and come back down, and then you can shut it off. It usually means that one of these wires, either the black or the red, should be on that odd colored screw, and you may just have to just switch those two around to make it work. And if that doesn't work, or even if you understand it, well, how can I say this? If you are not 100% comfortable doing electric work in your house, simply don't.
Don't do it.
I mean, besides the fact that you can get a very bad shock to the point where it could be a deadly shock, you can also create a situation where down the road, the house will start on fire. In either case, bad news. Electric work is not hard to do once you understand it, but if you don't have 100% understanding, just simply don't. Find somebody who is comfortable with it and have them do it. And I'll let that go for this part. And if you need me for something else, I got a other little electric thing I can deal with.
Okay, I'm sure we'll probably get back to you. Now I'd like to welcome Tim Johnson.
Good evening.
We're offering a wide variety of fix-it topics this evening, from toilets to electricity to wait till you hear what Tim's going to teach us.
Tuck pointing. Everybody wants to learn about tuck pointing. It's everybody shook their head when I thought about doing this today. Oh, it's going to be too difficult. It's really not. I had a job when I was in college, and I was a mason tender. You haul brick, block, mix up mortar, and you repair damaged mortar. When my boss would get a call that a chimney was falling apart or stone foundation had mortar missing and moisture was getting in there, that's what I would do. He would have me go to the job site. I'd have just a few tools. It's super simple to do, but it is very important, because what happens, especially this time of year, is water comes off your roof. It splashes on your driveway or the side of your house. It's off your eaves, splashes onto your foundation, and it erodes your mortar. Also, what happens is in the fall or the winter, before it really turns to snow, the moisture will splash onto your foundation. It will freeze, expand, and pop that mortar out. This is called spalling. When the mortar falls apart, that's called spalling. Well, we're going to discuss how to correct spalling. So I have a home in the city of Kalamazoo. It's an older home, and it has large rocks. There's split rock on the foundation. And every 5 years or so, I have to go over there, and I take just a few things with me. I take a bucket. I take rubber gloves. I take this tool. This is called a tuck pointing tool. I take a scrub brush, and I take a grout bag. It's a Marshalltown grout bag. It looks like a frosting bag. Everything's backward. I see what they're talking about.
I want to know if you do cupcakes and cakes with that.
I can give it a whirl. You may chip your tooth on a rock in the mortar, but I'll give it a shot. So what happens is you take a hammer, because there's usually some loose mortar. You want to break that loose. You want to chip that off there. So, Gene, if you went out there, you would take a little hammer. You'd get a masonry chisel. Okay, let's talk about that. Where you get all the stuff. Walk into the overhead door at Lowe's. You know, the contractor service end. Walk in, go as far to the left as you can, which is right there. You only have to go over like 2 aisles, turn to the right, and immediately there on the right is everything you would need to do this entire job. And I need to tell you, there is nothing that you can do while you are tuck pointing that's going to damage anything beyond repair. And I'll tell you why as we move forward. But you would go over, you would get these tools. So, Gene, you would take your hammer. You take a little chisel, anything that's loose, anything that's starting to fall apart, you're going to chisel that and just knock it out. Then what you would do once you got that cleaned up is you would take this brush with some clean water. You would clean the stone. You clean the loose debris. Just get it off there. We need good bonding surfaces to put our mortar in, right?
Kind of like getting a peeling, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you gotta clean it up. You have to bond to the surface. So that's what you do. You would scrub it. Then you would take the bag of mortar that you bought at Lowe's. You would take a bucket and you would pour some mortar in the bucket, and then you would pour some cold water in the bucket, and you would mix it with a paint stir or your trowel, your tuck pointing trowel, hopefully something a little bit bigger than that. But you would just make enough to like fill this grout bag half full. You don't want too much in there. So then what you would do is you would mix that up, and it would be a pretty soft consistency. Now, what you would do is you would take this tip right here. You'd take a pair of scissors and you'd cut it just a little bit larger. This is a very small opening right there. It's a very small opening. If you cut this larger, it will make it a little bit easier. So then what you will do, start out with it a little bit thicker, put it in the bag. If it drips out the end, that's too wet. So then you turn it upside down, shake it back in the bucket, add a little bit more of the dry mortar to it, and temper that mud up again. Now, what you'll do is once you do that, you will fill about half this bag, and then you will fold the top of the bag over, and then you will roll it up because you have to apply pressure to the top to squeeze it out the bottom. And as you work this mortar out, let me back up here a little bit. As you roll this down, imagine that this is just full of mortar. It will squeeze out the tip, and then you can go right along your brick, block, stone, whatever it is, and fill that up. Yeah, Gene?
What's the difference between mortar and like cement or Quikrete?
That's the type of the cement that they use in there. It's going to be, and they have the bags are clearly labeled mortar. So you can get a ready mix mortar that has the sand in it, or you can get, I don't know why you'd ever do this, but we'll talk about it. You could get a type N mortar and then a bag of sand and then mix them in the proper ratio. That's what we had to do when I was a mason tender. 19 scoops of sand to 3 scoops of mortar, mix it in a mortar mixer, and then dump it out. That's just what we did. You just get the ready mix type and just add water to it. But it's the component, it's the cementitious component in there that makes the difference. So you just get the mortar mix. You don't want cement, and it comes with sand in it, and it's all ready to go. So once you do that, once you fill your mortar joint up, if it's a wide one in stone, I use my tuck pointing tool, and I just kind of smooth it off just a little bit. Then I let it set for a period of time. Then you can use this brush since you have it. I usually used a very soft horsehair brush, but then I would lightly go over the joint that I put in, let it set for 15 or 20 minutes until it's firm. You don't want it to smear. You just kind of want to dust it off and make it a smooth mortar joint. And then once that's done, you let it set up. And then a couple days later, once again at Lowe's, you get what's called muriatic acid. Then with this same brush, you grab gloves, you grab safety glasses, the rubber gloves that come up your sleeve a little bit, like the chemical gloves. And then you pour muriatic acid in a bucket, and then you can dip your brush in there and then scrub the mortar off the stone. If it's made your stone dull, which a lot of times when you brush it off, it will do that. It kind of smears the mortar onto the stone a little bit. You can clean that up with this brush and that muriatic acid, and then just rinse it all off with a hose at the end. And you can do that. It's like Harry talking about electrical. You can do this. First, your get out of jail free card is that muriatic acid. There's nothing you're going to do that's going to damage the stone. It's not going to damage the block. If you get the mortar on something you didn't want to get it on, muriatic acid cuts it off. It'll clean it up. But if you're pretty confident and you want to repair your chimney, on one of my houses, I need to get it repaired this year. I have in my valley, I see chunks of white. Well, that's mortar. Moisture got in there, or it's the crown of the chimney. Moisture got in there, it froze, and it pushed that mortar out. So this year, I've got to get up there, put tarps down on my roof. I need to mix up a bucket of this mud, take it up there, and tuck point those rows in between, the mortar joints in between the brick. And then once I'm done with that, I'll let it dry. I'll clean it with muriatic acid. I'll rinse off my roof real good. I'll clean everything up. And then once it's done on both my stone foundation and my brick, I will take a pump sprayer with Thompson's water seal. And I will spray that all around my chimney, the top of my chimney. And I also go around the foundation with that once I get all my stone tuck pointed back in, and that will help with the water resistance. But that's pretty much tuck point 101 right there. Very easy to do, just takes a little ambition.
Now, am I imagining that I've seen mortar in a tube that's like caulk?
Yeah, but it's not really mortar. It's a gray. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a latex-based or an acrylic-based gray substance that you can use. I don't recommend it.
I love substance.
This is the way to do it. You can hire somebody to do it, but really, this is 101. I mean, to get everything you need would be like $30, and just a little bit of knowledge, you can maintain your foundation, keep moisture out very easily. It's super easy. You're not really, muriatic acid is the only thing that's really gonna be questionable.
You have to be careful with.
Yeah, absolutely. Mortar will make your hands will dry your hands out. So when you're doing your mortar mixing, you're gonna wear gloves there too, because it will dry your hands out. They feel real slimy to start with, but boy, oh boy, when they dry out, they'll dry and crack. So you do want to protect yourself against that, but it's a super easy job. It's you can see what you've done when you get it, when you complete it, and it cleans up very nicely. And the muriatic acid will clean the stone too. The foundation will look better than it has in a long, long time.
When you're doing between bricks, do you have to like when you caulk, you kind of have a concave thing, or can you just fill it in?
You tool caulk. You've got so many good questions, Gene. I love that. Okay, so
can you tell what I'm trying to do?
And what I didn't bring, you're right. That's called a spoon joint. Okay. So what we're talking about is a spoon joint. So when we talked about when you broom your joints down like on the stone, it's about when the mud is the same consistency. You don't want to spoon a joint. They have a tool. It's called a spoon. It's about 8 inches long. It's hard to get it in here, but it's about 8 inches long. It's a couple bucks. They have that at Lowe's too. And then you just spoon that joint across. You do your horizontals, and then you do your head joints, and you just spoon them. Exactly. Now you have another type of joint, the ones that are set back in farther. I'm sure you've seen those where they're not concave. The mortar is actually set in. Those are rake joints. And that has a wheel with the nail head down in it. And then you rake out those joints. Generally, we did those on the interior of a home, like on a fireplace. Those tend to be rake joints, but they do have them on exteriors too. So you got spoon joints and rake joints. But yeah, you spoon that. It keeps the moisture from getting within the brick, because when moisture gets within the brick and then it freezes, it pops the face of the brick off. You see that a lot especially downtown on older chimneys that haven't been maintained. Once you get moisture in those brick, because brick is porous, and if you don't keep it out of the surface of that, a lot of times the face of the brick is glazed, but as you get back in the brick, it's not glazed, and then moisture will get in there, freeze up, and pop.
I have a totally semi-unrelated question that's a personal question. I had someone come and repair some of my squares of the sidewalk from my house to the city sidewalk.
Yeah.
He did not do a very good job, and I have some real concave places that I get puddles.
Oh, okay.
When it says scattered showers, I'll still get a puddle, okay? And it's only, this deep, but it's of course in the winter it freezes.
It freezes, yeah.
Can I put self-leveling concrete in there to level it out, or will it just pop out?
It's probably just going to pop up. You could put a bonding agent. You could go to like Consumers Concrete, which is on East Main. It's sprinkled.
East Main.
Yep. You can go there. Yep. You can go there and they'll give you a bonding agent. Tell them what you're trying to do. And then you can do a thin pour over the top of that. But you'd need a bonding agent because that would have to be scarified or chemically etched to bond.
Yeah. Somehow it's got to. A's got to stick to B somehow.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yup. That's exactly right. That's pretty tough. A lot of times, like when you go, let's say you go to someone's house and you get out of your vehicle in their driveway, and it looks like there's pocks all over their driveway. Have you seen that? Where there's just like divots out of the cement driveway? Okay, and that's a problem because they didn't use limestone. They used native stone in the cement mix, and native stone contains moisture. So in the wintertime, the moisture in those stones will expand and then pop the surface of that concrete off. So then people get tired of that, and then they go back with like a hydraulic cement and try to get that to stick in there, and it just doesn't do it. We used to get called for that all the time, and it just doesn't work. And you're kind of looking at the same thing because they didn't screed your concrete off level. They didn't screed it off properly and left those little duck ponds in there. That's gonna be kind of difficult. Now you could go over that with another pour. You could frame that up another 2 inches and then go with a sand mix or pea gravel mix over the top of that. But you would need a good bonding agent between the two. And then the last one wouldn't mesh in perfectly with your city sidewalk. There'd be a step there, which is there you go. That's the best idea.
And I keep my ice melt, and I just sprinkle them to make sure that it's usually water all winter and not.
Yeah, that's disappointing. Yeah. Okay.
Because I've seen it, on Pinterest and places, and then you go into Lowe's or wherever, and it says self-leveling concrete. And I know we used it in the basement of our old house.
Sure.
But it's different inside than outside.
Yeah.
In the basement, it will bond better because it's not out there in the hot and cold.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yep.
Well, does anyone else, come on, all you people who are watching, don't you have questions for our experts? Thank you, Tim. I learned what I needed to learn because I'm a brick house.
What have you ever wanted to know about tuck pointing? You can do all of that for less than $50.
I actually tuck pointed the majority of my house a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it?
It was fun. It was kind of like icing without having to caulk. Yeah. I do better with that squeezy bag than I do with the gun. Yeah. But thank you, Tim. Hang on in case someone has a question, and we're going to go back to Harry, who you've got about 10 minutes. Harry, what can you tell us in 10 minutes?
Well, we'll go back to the electric thing. I think when we were discussing this earlier, I had mentioned about switches and so on. You said something about lamps. So I'm not going to go into too much of that. I will say, though, that sometimes on a lamp, you're going to have to replace the plug. Okay. And this is kind of an older type, but it's still a great one. To replace the plug, you'll take the lamp wire. Oh, there we are. And pull, I got about 3, maybe 3.5 inches. I've separated the two sides. Put that through onto the plug. Now, this is one of those plugs that doesn't have any kind of a strain relief on it. This is an older style. Where are we at here? There we go. So what we used to do in the old time is we'd make what's called an Underwriter's knot. And I'm going to do one. And all I do is I'm going to hold it up here. There we go. I make a little loop on one side with the wire going to what's behind the back side of mine. The other one with the wire going to the front side, kind of made a little pretzel. Stick the end through there and stick the end through the other loop and pull them tight. And it's better that I just kind of demonstrate this to you, but if you really want to do it, Google it, because actually it's been so long since I've done it. I actually did that today. Pull them tight, and that little knot is what gives it a little bit of a strain relief so that when you pull the plug, the wires aren't holding the strain. When you pull it out, the cord is actually then stuck in. Now, once we have that, and again, this is we got to figure out a different way to do this with the backwards thing. I'm working in the mirror. Okay. I know about how much of the wire I need. I just kind of wrap that around the screw. There we go. Does that show up? Yeah, sort of. And that's where I'm going to cut off the excess, strip off, maybe a 1/2 inch of the insulation. And what I do, when I stripped off the wall wiring, the solid wire, I just pulled it right off. But when I'm doing wire that's stranded, like lamp cord, I like to leave a little bit of the insulation on because it makes it easier for me to twist it and get a nice tight twist. And then just like when I was working with the wall, you put it around the screw in a clockwise direction and tighten it down. Now, to save time, I'm not going to do both sides. But what I will say is if you have something like this, make sure it came with an insulator, which is just a little piece of plastic that fits over the edge to cover the screws when you plug it back in the wall. At the other end of the lamp is the socket that holds the bulb. And they usually look like something like this. I've taken it apart. Inside is this item here. And it can either have a push button switch. Some of them don't have any switch. This one has a rotary switch. Inside, when you look at it, this one in particular is for a 3-way light. You can see that there's a brass piece in the center. There's a small silver piece towards the edge. And then, of course, you've got the screw end. The screw end would be the neutral. The brass and that small white piece or silver piece would be for the various wattages of a 3-way bulb. And just like anything else, they've got a silver screw and a brass screw. And in this one, which I've taken apart probably went and stole the screw out of it. That would be another brass screw for the other wattages. If you do that, just hook it up the same way I showed you on the plug. Simply wrap the wire around the screw, turn it in a clockwise direction, but be very certain that when you put the item back together, you put it in with that cardboard tube that comes with it, slide it into the collar, and then place the end and snap it. Any other questions about that, Gene? You're off. Your volume's down. There.
Now I'm on. Jason took me off. Yeah, it looks relatively straightforward and simple. We do offer a class in lamp repair when we get back in person. We let you bring your lamp in, and Harry will help you get it back into working condition. I have one waiting in my garage for when we can do that class again. So I'm looking forward to it. Does anyone have any questions? Do any of you have questions? Oh, let's see. This is a question. My old dead spark plug is stuck in my lawnmower. Any advice on how to remove it? I can tell you what I would do, but there's spark plug remover pliers, aren't there?
They have it's a socket. It's a deep well socket that's made specifically for spark plugs. I don't know if Dorothy's using just trying to use a wrench or whatever, but if you have a deep well socket, a spark plug socket, and have it on a large breaker bar, usually it breaks free. It depends on how badly it maybe was corroded in there. It's an interesting thing because I've never had one that's been stuck that bad.
Yeah, there might be that might be a good spot to squirt a little WD-40 around that and let it set for a little bit. But when you do get it out and you go to replace it, it's very specific on there that when you tighten it finger tight, you only turn it a quarter of a turn, so you don't have this issue in the future. It'll tell you right on your spark plug box how tight to make that after you get it finger tight. So hopefully you won't have that in the future.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if possibly in the work that the gasket that comes with it wasn't put there and they just tightened it up real tight to get a good seal.
And is it better to use WD-40 or graphite?
Well, WD-40 is gonna be, graphite is nice for like locks. It doesn't get gunky. But in this case, you're gonna want a penetrant, some type of a penetrant.
What's the one? Shoot, I can't remember what it's called. It's not WD-40, but it penetrates and breaks up the gunk.
Penetrating oil. It's called penetrating oil. No?
It's a particular brand that they had
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
I want to say JB Weld, but that puts things back together, but it's like that.
Right. Yeah, they do have it. I used to listen to the Jim Rome show, and there was a advertisement that was on there all the time. It said about getting stuck nuts loose, and there was a whole jingle about it. But for the life of me, I can remember the advertisement, but I can't remember.
But not the product.
No, it'd be in the same area if you went to an auto parts store.
Yeah. Well, or even Lowe's sells it, and you can get like just a little container of it. Because I have a cart that the wheels were stuck, and that's what somebody told me to go get, and it seemed to work. So, and I had tried WD-40, and it didn't do it. So,
okay.
Dorothy, keep trying everything. Well, it's just about 7 o'clock. I would like to thank everyone for watching this show this evening. I hope you all learned something that will be helpful in your projects. I would like to remind you that we are a nonprofit organization and appreciate your donations. It's been scrolling across the bottom how to send those to us. And if you have any questions, whether it was on a topic that we covered tonight or just something else of how do I fix it, please contact us at communityhomeworks.org or education@communityhomeworks.org. I will get your question and I will contact my lovely crew of experts who will give you a much better answer. I'm like Harry, I can tell you something, but it doesn't mean you should believe me sometimes. So I will say, and I highly recommend once we're back in session that you come to a class. I've been coming for every class for 2.5 years, and I'm amazed at what I've learned. So thank you again, guys. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye, guys. Thanks
Take
for
care.
watching.
Take care.
I know. You promised we were going to get back together and talk.